and welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to do a test here, but I'm kind of working the scene around really a specific type of color schemes that I can utilize these pens in maybe a little bit more of a kind of a full, I don't know, application of their potential. I've been using some existing scenes that I already stamped out and just kind of coloring them in. But let's see what we can do here with, I don't know, more of a catered composition. Okay, so I'm just going to work small here. I don't want to do any kind of really big scene right now. This is my cabin here. Well, darn it. Let's see, I might need to re-ink my pad here. It looks a little bit dry. Few drops like that. All right. This stamp might be really inked up. I don't know. Do you ever find that sometimes it doesn't look inked up to you? Then you stamp it out, and indeed it was. I don't know. Okay, so let's see. Let's go about midway. I'll kind of position the cabin where it's kind of in the center of the page. I'm not positioning this stamp central because then this cabin would be way on the left-hand side facing left. I like to have this kind of going into the scene a little bit more, or centralized, okay? So I'm stamping it a little bit more right-oriented as far as the cabin goes, not as far as the stamp goes. Okay, now I'm stamping this on a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch quarter page card. All right, and let's see here. Let's go ahead and I'll show you how I do this coloring here. Now this one right here, I just did it all in black, but this one right here, why don't we utilize a little bit of color here? I'll go in. Now I have a lot of black on here, so it might just stamp out black, but I'll see if I can get a little bit of additional color in here. So color it up with black dye-based ink, okay? And going back into it with a green dye-based ink and just adding some little bit of tone in there. I probably should have done on this tree too, but we'll just leave it like that. As is. Okay. Going like that. And I don't know if you can see, but there's a little tinge of green in there, okay? See that? Here's all black, and then can you see that little tinge of green in these trees? All right. And why don't we do that one more time? The juicier your green is, and how dry the, relatively dry the black is will depend, will determine how green this is. If you're using a wetter pen than the pad, then you'll get more green, okay? For the most part, it's just a kind of a general statement. And I don't know, sometimes if the inks are a different brand, there might be different viscosity issues. So I don't know, you just got to play around with it a little bit. Okay, so that is the tree cluster, just adding that in like so. All right, now here's where I'm going to change some color tones around. Okay, we're going to have a lot of kind of spring colors in here. So, let's see. I'm trying to decide on what color to do this in. I'm wondering if I should go black. That might be a little bit too black, but I've done this kind of color scheme before, and it's pretty fun. Adding some kind of these purplish pink trees. It's kind of like, I don't know, like apple or cherry blossoms or something like that. I don't know, something of that sort. Okay, so that being said, I'm not really too concerned about the color on this. Coloring it a different hue other than black will just kind of give it a head start. Okay, now I'm wiping off the bottom part of this because it's going to be up here. It's going to look like background trees, okay? So what you do is you just kind of blot this off like this and kind of taper it a little bit. So I'm really wiping the bottom off and then just kind of tapping off some of this tone right here so it goes from dry to medium dry to wet up here. And then what I'm doing is I'm just going to stamp it like that. You can mask off if you want to, but if you've done that kind of drying off of the imagery, then you don't need to worry about it too much, okay? All right, so we have those trees in the background like so, and those are the ones where I'm really going to add a lot of colored marks. Let's try to go for a second impression. I don't know how it's going to come out because this is a kind of a dull, more of a matte tone paper, okay? So it did take a lot of the ink right there. I did get a decent impression up there, though. Okay, so I thought that worked out pretty good. So I tell you what, let's ink that up again, and we'll try to go for that same type of coloring methodology here with these two other hues. This is kind of a magenta right here, and that mixes with the black pretty well. And then here's a red. Okay, a lot of my pens are really dry, but you know, they serve their purpose. With the Marvy pens, they do have the Marvy matchable re-inkers, so if you have these brush markers like that, you just pop open the back. And this comes out like that, and you fill that up with ink like that. I almost smashed the dickens out of that, but okay, it's ready to go. Okay, so wiping off the bottom part of this a little bit. Let's get a little bit of a kind of some foreground foliage in here too. This could be trees or it could be bushes, whatever you want it to be. Yeah, I can go down like that and put another one over here maybe. Let's do that. I did a lot of coloring when I was with the Stamp in the Hand company using the Marvy brush markers pre-stamp pads, believe it or not. But that sounds really ancient when I say pads did not exist. Not really for rubber stamps, not craft rubber stamping, but you know, there was business types of, you know, pads and whatnot. But for the craft market, there weren't raised dye-based pads. And why is that? Because the ink would flow out of that. So Marvy just gave it a really dense pad like that. And most other pad companies, ink companies, they made a pad that was, an ink that was very thick so that it wouldn't flow out of a fabric pad. But Marvy went with a foam pad, so a little aside there. Okay, so we have our foundation coloring right here, or not coloring, but our composition right here. Let me put in some grass down here, and let's go with, how about a deep green? Okay, this is my grass cluster stamp. All right, just going to stamp it right down in here like so. Okay, something like that. Okay, it's a little busy, I know, but there's going to be a ton of change in here anyways. This is kind of like a, well, I mean, it's the composition and everything like that. We're going to work with the composition, but when you're working with these paint pens and everything that we're going to put on here, it doesn't really matter too much about how this looks. You can miss some of the stamping. You could, I don't know, you can clutter it up. You can overlap and whatever. It's not going to matter, you know. Maybe it matters to you kind of at the moment in the stage it's in, but this isn't a finished piece, so, you know, we're going to work with it. Okay, now, I just re-inked my black pad, so that's pretty juicy, so let's heat set this. Look at my finger there, up there. You can tell how wet it is then. Look at that color of magenta right there. It looks like I'm bleeding or something like that. So that just comes to show you how kind of wet this pad was. All right, now I have a big globby fingerprint up there. What would you do about something like that if you saw that? Would you kind of get panicky or whatever? Or would you say, oh, that's not even going to matter? Well, For me, it's really not going to matter, okay? All right, now let's just make this really easy. I could color this in with some dye-based inks, but I think it'll just be a lot faster if I just do it with some alcohol markers, okay? Okay, so these alcohol markers are going to play kind of a, pretty significant role in this piece, but they're not really going to, I don't know, play a huge role kind of in the overall scheme of things. Now, in certain areas it might, okay, because I won't go over them too much. Okay, so adding some of this tan in that pad. I didn't dry everything really well in here, okay, so I'm dragging around some ink. Alcohol and dye-based inks really don't mix, alcohol and dye, okay? Water-based media. But if something's still wet, that pen will drag it around a little bit. Okay, so I've added some of that down in here. Let's go in this cabin now. I'm going to go darker on the vertical sides of the cabin, okay? And when you do that, what happens here? The rooftop is lighter, right? Like it's capturing the light in this given location. We can put some shadows around these two little, I don't know what they call those, attic kind of ventilations, or could be a window too. Alright, so you go a little bit darker underneath there, underneath the eave, right? See, that gives it a little bit more dimension like so. Alright. Having a uniform tone up on the roof doesn't look, too finished. There's all these trees up here, so let's give this rooftop, some shadows up here so that it doesn't look so kind of mono value. You can use some of this additional color on the sides, underneath the eaves like that. Maybe the back of the cabin's a little bit darker than the front, okay? Down here around these bushes, you can put a little bit more. So this, you kind of make it a little bit more irregular, and it looks more natural that way. In terms of the coloring and lighting, okay? This. Alright, so adding that down. Let's hit the grass a little bit. I like to start with lighter tones, and then I incrementally work into the darker tones, okay? So adding some of this around my cabin, I put these, some shadows underneath these trees, alright? We can put some color up into the trees too. Okay. Alright. That was a light green. Let's work into, let's try a little bit of a brighter, warmer green, okay? Like so. Alright, looks pretty bad, doesn't it? And it does, if that were just what we were going to leave it at, okay? But it's not. We're going to blend this in about like so. Even bringing some into the cabin, kind of incorporating that color in with the surrounding area. All right, let's go back to some of this tan. I think I used some of this on my cabin. I don't even know. All right, that doesn't look tan because I'm moving around that super wet magenta tone in there, okay? But I still want to keep it nice and light. And my trees are going to end up looking pinkish in hue anyway, so go ahead and use that and move that color around in there. It looks more pink than tan, okay, but that won't be the end result. What we're doing here is we're giving this kind of a general color scheme. I mean, we might be defining some of the things too. It just depends on how much we go over it with some additional color, okay? So here's an actual pink right here. It's a little bit of a warm pink. Okay. So, and I think we're just about getting there. I won't add too much more. Here's a little bit of a darker green. But the more that I kind of develop with my pens here, too, the less work that I'll have to do with the acrylic paint pens to kind of further develop certain areas. So, you know, I'll try to give a pretty full kind of color statement, I guess you could say, call it, with the alcohol pens. We still have that big old blob up there, but that'll be covered up later on. Okay, so what color sky do we want to put in here? Let's give it a little bit of a, oh, I don't know, maybe kind of a sunset, maybe a sunrise type of tone or something like that. Make use of kind of the color scheme, the pinks and whatnot. We'll incorporate that little blob into the scene. Okay, so I'm going to with this little bit of a warm tone back in here. You can see that streak of ink that's in there. No big deal. Okay, here's pink. Bring some of these streaks in here like this. Okay. Now, if I were just coloring with these alcohol pens, I would be much more careful about my placement, but I just know that I just don't need to be careful whatsoever. Well, I don't know about whatsoever. Not much, though, with the way that I'm going to be applying these different colors, okay? So see how streaky that is up there? Okay. All right. So, color schemes. We have greens down here, okay? And I have, like 3 different values of, this is kind of a greenish gray, I'd say. We have some blues in here. I thought I'd have a blue sky, but I don't, at this point in time, I'm not going to be doing that, so let's take those out of the mix. Pinks, right? And, I don't know, that'll be kind of the dominant thing. So let's start right here. I mean, you can start with whatever ones that you want of these, okay? So here's a green. And I'm going to start adding down some of these little dots in here. My green, we're going for this pointillist type of application of these, okay? And yeah, there's a little bit of a kind of a time-consuming kind of process of that, but it's not too much, it's not as much as you think. I mean, I filled in this whole area right here, and I'm all the way across my scene right now in this green area, and I don't know, what are we talking about? Like a minute, maybe 2 minutes? I don't know, something like that. I mean, we have a lot more way to go with some additional tones, but just with this one green to start off with, this isn't really too bad. Where do you add this? Okay, I'm adding this, for the most part, this is a dark green. It's like a Christmas green or something like that. And I'm adding it in these areas where I think it'll be fairly dark, okay? So I'm kind of adding it in the areas where I've established kind of a darker area. With the alcohol pens, I've kind of done that. So it's usually in the shadows a little bit, but you don't have to abide by that, okay? Because we can just go over them still with lighter tones, which I'll be doing here. Oh, here's a little bit of darker one. I haven't even used this one yet. Yeah, I don't know, maybe it's kind of a neutral gray. I don't know if the colors are on the pens here. I don't think it is. So, whatever color that looks like to you, that's what color it is, because they don't mention it on the barrel. If they started putting color on this barrel like this, you're talking a much more expensive process to make these types of pens. It's just easier to do the color-coded cap. I guess we can think that they do the color-coded cap like this as opposed to just kind of putting on a colored sticker around it or something like that. And what I've found so far with these pens is that this type of indexing, the color-coded cap like that, they're pretty good about getting that color matched up pretty well. Okay, this is a gray, especially next to that green, so I won't be using too much of this. Kind of a pointillist type of process, though. You can see a lot of colored dots next to each other. And that's the way that looks right there. I know. It looks really crazy. If you haven't seen the other two scenes that I've done so far, I mean, you know, if I hadn't seen it too, I might be kind of going, oh, I don't know where this is going. You know, this might not be good. And who knows, maybe this doesn't turn out, you know, too, I don't know, nice of a scene either, but we'll see here. Okay, so kind of adding, this is the light tone, as you can see, adding this down like that. It certainly makes for, I don't know, kind of a friendly, playful look, I would say. If the pointillists, you know, back in the day had these pens, who knows, maybe they might be painting with these. I don't know. You get less kind of gesture and whatnot with these pens than you would a brush, but who knows, you know, the artists back in the day doing kind of pointillism work, you know, this is a pretty nice little option. Okay, I need to shake up some of these pens. If you're going with a certain color scheme, just grab them all and shake them all at once. Why not? Okay. All right. Pinks. Let's use some of these pinks in our foreground and our background trees, okay? So these are like foreground bushes or something like that. This is like almost like the magenta that I used on my maple duo. Okay, yeah, this one needs a little bit more shaking up here. The more you shake up this acrylic paint in here, the more opaque it'll be, and I want nice little opaque dots. I don't know. This one's looking a little bit more translucent. I don't know why. Could be just the characteristic of this particular paint. Okay. It's almost transparent, even more than translucent. Okay. So I'm just kind of using it for the color in the pen. Now, I would do more, if I had more browns, I would use more browns in my, yeah, I'm putting this over the black, and it's almost like, you know, really, really transparent. I don't know if shaking this up more is going to do it. If not, we'll just move on to our next pen. Okay, let me see here. Yeah, I don't know. This magenta one is really, really transparent. Okay, alright. So that is in the background there. Alright, still looking pretty crazy down there. Look at that craziness going on down there. Okay. I'd say this is like a pale lilac. I don't know why I keep trying to put the caps on the back of these pens here, but these should kind of stick in like that, you know, but they don't. Not on all these. On a couple of them they do. Okay, so adding this in my trees in the background there. It's a little bit of a lighter value. Okay, so it really kind of sticks out quite a bit from a visual standpoint because it has no problem covering up black, which I thought all the pens were going to do, but that last one really didn't. I mean, it's not, but it's almost like using a dye-based ink. Okay, we'll use it in our foreground as well. It's a way to kind of incorporate, unify the composition using some of these colors in the foreground as well as the background. It doesn't have to be that kind of configuration, close and far. You can have it in other areas of your piece. Okay, now just for a little bit of a integration, I'll use some of this down here in my grass, okay? Just so that things aren't so, I don't know, what's the word, disparate, kind of unrelated from visuals or textural standpoint, okay? Visual standpoint, hue, texture, and I don't know, maybe temperature. This lilac is, yeah, I don't know if it's not a real cool color in terms of temperature, but it is not warm either. So anyways, when you have little dots in that color back there, and you have it down here and here, there's a little bit more of a kind of a unification going on. Okay, so this is a little bit of a tan tone. It's really close to this color that's in this lighter area of the cabin. So I'll put it in those areas, but then also kind of bring it around to other areas of the cabin. Just to get a little bit of this texture in that area, okay? And, okay, that color's in there. You can put a few down here, too. It's like a, I don't know, some colored light, reflecting in these areas. Kind of going for a little bit of a kind of a shimmering quality to the piece. All right. I'm not zooming in as much because I keep working like down here when I zoom out too much. I don't know. Maybe I need to, have a smaller blotter paper positioned up here. So let's go in a little bit more though. Okay. All right. So for the most part, I'm working dark to light so far. Okay. Now it's more of a circular process. I'll back up and go back around to light tones as well. Or darker tones, probably. Well, we'll just see how this goes. Okay, this is white. All right, so white is going to be the lightest value. And no lighter tones than this one. Yeah, I almost can't even see my, the forms of my impressions anymore in a couple areas. Okay, alright, so that's getting a little bit closer to what I've always wanted, from a textural standpoint with these pens. I've been wanting to go a lot more extreme and kind of bold in my usage of these pens, so that, I don't know, we can showcase the potential marks that these make, alright? So there's just certain types of imagery that kind of lend themselves to that, and that's ones of like the autumn. I'm using a lot of autumn foliage, images that are open and have kind of this kind of billowy texture to them, and that is lending itself to a colored dot. Okay, so adding this up around my trees. Just in general, I'm working with the lightest tones, so it tends to be on the upward side a given form, okay? So what I mean by that is if there's kind of a bush like this, okay? Okay. On the upward sides, now see, this is an upward side of this form, but there's top forms throughout the piece, so it's these lighter areas, okay, that I'm putting a few little dots, 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 okay? Now the darker ones, I put the darker ink down on these areas, the undersides, okay? But the lighter ones are going on the top sides kind of loosely, okay? So you might see it like right here, okay? Can you see this like right here? See, my dots are on the top edges of those forms, okay? Now, like I said, we're kind of losing our forms the more dots that I lay down on here because my forms are getting a little bit buried in texture. But I could see them before I put the dot down, so they provided kind of a nice model by which to apply my values, okay? Same thing down here in these trees. I oscillate my lights and darks across all my different imagery, okay? So from left to right I go dark, light, dark. But going from the bottom up, okay? On this tree I go dark, light, dark, you know, light, dark, light, right? And I do that all up there. Then I also put it down here in the forms. So that's what you want in imagery, in visuals, okay? A lot of imagery are just like outlines, but they don't describe anything, okay? When they do that, it puts all of the onus on you as an individual to have to kind of define all that and interpret that. But, you know, these are rubber stamps, and if those things have already been kind of established for you, it takes out just so much work for you have to do. And instead of concentrating on things like color, texture, and kind of, you know, the quest for an expression, personal expression, you're having to think about defining forms, okay? So it's a lot easier if it's just kind of inherently on there. So that's what you kind of want to look for when you look for imagery. Look for textures and definition and the oscillation of light and dark so that you can concentrate as a user of imagery the things that are kind of more important to you, you know, the spirit of something, the card, the emotional types of things, not kind of the fundamental visual values, okay? So that goes for me too. When I'm using these pieces like this, I'm able to concentrate on kind of, you know, experimentation, expression, all those types of things without having to think about, you know, other types of foundational considerations, you know, with, you know, the very images that I'm working with. All right, so look at this. This is crazy, but this is really exactly what I'm going after. Okay, look how busy and dot pattern-ish all that is. I'm showing you kind of, you know, on a side so you can kind of look at it as kind of more of an abstract form, okay? Now my cabin really stands out in there, but like I said, you know, these pens, there's not a lot of different colors that these come with, okay? Well, I don't know, what it was a set of, I don't know, how many were there in here? I don't want to count them right now. Okay, so let me go with, I haven't even used this tan one yet, okay? I thought I already had. Okay, let's get this one flowing. I don't know, I hope you can tell I'm not kind of fibbing when I say that I haven't used these pens before. So kind of, you know, you can see me kind of engaging these first usage pens. Okay, this is a little bit of a peach tone, and it really needs to be shaken up quite a bit, especially with your first usage. All right, so that right there. Okay, so let's go into our cabin and let's add down a few types of line work. I'll put, I'm not good at this, okay? Using these big fat markers, okay? So I'm just putting a little bit of light on that rooftop like that. It's a really bad application of it there, but some tones down in here. I don't like that too much. Oh, you can just kind of wipe it right off here. I'm wiping it off with my finger. Alright, that was just too fat of a pen. I have some thinner pens. Maybe I ought to dip into that. Okay, so like I said, why not bring some of this down here into the lighter areas to bring a little bit of continuity into the piece, okay? Because we're representing colored light hitting this, okay? So that light is shimmering off other objects in here, okay? Getting more into the kind of the impressionistic pointillist spirit here. I do a lot of stippling, so I'm used to stippling, but the pointillists kind of their mission was different. Okay, it wasn't in the spirit of shading and tone. It was this kind of notion of light. So, not that I know a lot about them, but I don't know. Just thinking back into art history, we didn't spend a lot of time on pointillism though. Impressionism a little bit, yeah, and all that, fun stuff. But pointillist, I think we just looked at one piece. I think it's Syrah. Syrah, I think it was, A Walk in the Park. Okay. Incorporation of more tones and whatnot. I think the sky could use something, so let's go with the sky up here and add in some kind of little bits of color up here. I won't go too much, okay? But I'll just kind of go with these vertical types of, or horizontal, I should say. Horizontal kind of layers of color. Okay, like that. Here's pink. Oh my gosh. I must be blind. I don't know why you didn't grab this pink out. I mean, this is like the pen color that I should be using on this scene. One thing I'm glad about these pens is how fast they kind of engage from, empty in the tip to full. That ink really comes down in a hurry. I can watch it coming right down and soaking right into the nib. The pen tip right there. See that? So, the ideal, for me, combination of ink, or paint here, is that it's thin enough to where it flows really well and quickly and engages quickly, but it's still thick enough where it's nice and opaque. I like a nice opaque, mark when I'm going in. Oh, see that just covered right over that. That blob. That's what I mean. These paints are opaque, so you can cover something up, and it's, as you can see, it just covered that area right up there, no problem. Okay, so adding this in. Okay, now see, that's why I also kind of gave that foundational color up there. It provided me with a model by which to build my paint with, okay? This is almost becoming more paint than it is ink on the surface right here, at least. Okay, the visible surface area. Okay, so, I'm going with this pink over here, and this is really kind of engaging with the surface from a visual standpoint. It really should be my main color, I'm thinking. I have a lot of pink down in my green, believe it or not, right? Pink goes well with green. It's not mixing with green physically, it's just laying on the top. So you've seen that combination of colors before, pink and green. All right, so that's like it's pretty crazy, from a color standpoint, textural standpoint too. But it's kind of gone a little bit too crazy up there. But that's not going to be what it looks like in the end. Okay, we'll use some foreground imagery. Okay, I thought I might have lost some of that white up there. I think the white is kind of wet, so I might benefit from heat setting this and then laying the white over the top of it, where it's going to be nice and opaque and dry. A crisp dot, white dot in that area, instead of putting a white dot in this area and the other colors underneath bleeding into that white. Okay. Might benefit from that a little bit, but I don't care. I'm not going to take my time to do that, so. Heat set, I mean. Okay, so, but you can. I don't know if you want to try that. Okay, so adding some of this white up in this area. I don't know, it represents kind of like a little mist or cloud in this area. Add some of it in the background here, okay. In this lighter region. I hope you kind of understand at this point in time where I was coming from in terms of my coloring, and saying that things didn't matter too much. I didn't fuss over any of my alcohol ink coloring, and coloring in general. It was just kind of to give the gist of it, at least in terms of in this style of working right here, because things are going to get very coated anyway. See that tone up there in the sky? Okay, so now that's looking really crazy like that. I think what I'm going to do now is I think I'm going to go with my fine point pen, and I think I'm going to illuminate my windows in this cabin, okay? Things aren't real dark in here, but I think adding some light into this cabin, which is something you can do. This is just a white paint pen right here. It's a Miaosun white paint pen, but it's an acrylic white paint pen, so it's the same type of thing, but instead of being 3mm, it's 0.7mm pen. Okay, I just wiped off that tip there. I think I just dunked it up on the inside. There we go. Get flowing. I've had good luck with this pen so far. I've never had one clog on me, and I've used one to its absolute completion, meaning it was dry. Empty of ink, I should say. There's windows, and I'm trying to get into all the different, what do you call that window structure, how many lights there are, something like that. How many things are kind of broken off or whatever. So anyways, a little bit of a light inside that cabin like so. I'll use some of my little 0.7, to put a little bit of light down underneath some of these windows into this little porch area like that. Okay. Do little things on here that you can't do with the 3mm because they're so thick. texture on my rooftop slats. Put a little texturing on the side here, the cabin if you want. Okay, so I won't go too much of that. I don't know, we're trying to create kind of more of a general statement here in terms of our texturing. All right. Brilliance White. You can use, you know, like Hero Hues or whatever, something like that. The Brilliance is just going to dry a little bit faster for you, but I believe the other styles of pigment ink, brands of pigment ink, will dry on the surface of this just fine. On this matte surface, a lot of times I'm using things like foils and stuff and experimenting around with that, but those ones really do need the Brilliance, as far as I know, in order for it to dry. Okay. Okay, so anyways, cotton ball, 100% cotton, okay, and ink it up. Make it nice and flat. I'm using a really cheapo brand of cotton, some kind of no-name brand. Okay, so let's add some kind of misty, foggy type of look to this, okay? This is the thing that really kind of mellows things out for you. And you see I'm adding it in these areas where there's still a little bit of light. You see some light coming from below that tree line right there. Okay. Kind of puts it in a little bit of a mist and has the light kind of streaming through that area down there. See that right there? There's a little area back in here. Look at that diffusion there, though. Isn't that really fun and nice looking? Okay, let's go ahead and add it right up here on the tops of these trees. I'll have it kind of coming from behind these trees. Maybe through some of these trees you can see, still see a little bit of a lighter area back in there. And then what I'll do is I'll have this kind of from the horizon, have it a little bit lighter out here, and then I'll just bring it up into this sky area, okay? Down here, we can bring in a little bit of a kind of misty diffusion as well. It kind of makes some of these colors down here a little bit more kind of pastel in nature. Okay, some of them might be a little bit brighter inherently, so if you put a little white over it, it makes them kind of soft and pastel looking. Okay. All right, so see that fog is doing right there on that cabin? Doesn't it look like that cabin's a little bit more, I don't know, kind of inset into the scene, right? It's kind of behind something now, and it's behind not an object, but kind of a little bit of an illuminated mist. So it looks like it, you know, it's kind of a little bit more incorporated into the scene. It kind of makes it look a little bit more kinesthetic. You can feel that mist and air and light within the scene like that. And I'm using a pretty good amount of it, but don't put it everywhere, okay? Otherwise it looks a little bit too, oh, I don't know, too uniform. Kind of like a mono texture, okay? You want there to be a little bit of oscillation of crisp and soft, okay? This is creating kind of a soft light, right? You can have a little bit more of it in some areas, concentrate a little bit more so you have variation, okay? When this dries, though, it will dry a little bit, or to quite a bit darker. You know, when you apply pigment ink, for some reason, it looks a lot lighter when it's wet. Things like dye-based inks, you apply it, and they often look lighter when they're dry. Pigment inks look darker when they're dry, especially if you're applying them over a darker object. I don't know. they're a little bit more opaque looking when they're wet. Okay, now my skies and doing things in vast open areas with these pens is, leave something to, I don't know. They're not very a desirable texture, but I don't care because I just cover them up with stuff. So, here we go. From a textural standpoint, we have that going on. Okay. I've never used more dots in a scene than on this one right here. That is for sure. I think even a, I don't know, 11 by 17. I got some paint on this right here. How did I do that? Oh, I know. I took this and, oh, I know. When I shake this up in here, the paint gets in there, and when I put it on the back like that, so I don't know. I'm going to be careful about that. Yeah, a little bit of paint in there. Okay. Learning something new all the time. All right. Versifying clear. Let's bring some of this into the mix. I've been using my oak branch for all of these paint pen pieces. I don't know, I just have it out, so it's really convenient to use. And plus I haven't washed it yet, cleaned it up, so I might as well just keep using it. Okay, so this is a VersaFine Clair, so it should be a nice dark ink over the top of it. It has the best chance of being something nice and dark. It's an oil-based pigment ink, and very, very thick, yet at the same time very crisp impressions, which I always like. Detail-oriented. I like a media that can really stay nice, or apply, transfer, nice and dark. Okay. All right, so we have this overhanging tree limb right here. That's also why I said, I had that big blob up there. In the end, it wouldn't have mattered. If that blob was still up there, we took care of it with the paint pen, but if that wasn't taken care of, we'd have taken care of it with an overhanging branch. Okay, so here's this reed stamp here. Okay. Right there in the foreground right there. Kind of breaks up things a little bit more. Look at that texture in there though. Okay. It's kind of like a little stamp painting, don't you think? I mean, I guess it literally is. It's stamp painting when you have just so much paint in there. Okay, let's take a look at the texturing in here. All right. Look at that kind of... I wouldn't say it vibrates with that texture, but I don't know, it's pretty loud in terms of a statement, but hopefully it's not, kind of, absent of harmony in there. I still want it to be very, harmonious from a visual standpoint, and that's where that white pigment ink came in to play. Don't you think that white pigment ink plays a big role in this piece? I mean, look at all those little shimmering dots like that, but see that diffusion of it back here and throughout here and right in here? It just kind of mellows it out a little bit, but look at all that paint in there. So I'd say definitely, a good term could potentially be something like a stamp painting. Okay, now all this being said, when you go in here, I mean, if I do want to do a little bit of fine tuning in here, I can hit it with some additional alcohol pen work, okay, and that will go, it'll tone in, tone out or mellow out some of these colored dots in here, you can color your dots, okay? Which maybe I want to do in a couple of these areas, like underneath the eaves right here, whatever. You can make some different wood textures. You know, if you've kind of made too big of a statement with, you know, your paint pen on here, then just go back in and color it in with your pen accordingly, or you know, just however you know what you want to apply or do or whatever. So anyway, all right. So let's see. Let's get this card formatted. I'll wait for it to dry. The thing that I'm waiting for here is this wet, oil-based VersaFine Clair. You can see where it's really soaked in here. Okay. And we'll just wait for that to dry. I might just even wait for it overnight. Look how soaked it is up there. We could heat set a little bit too, but I think we'll just give this a rest and let it dry on its own. I'm looking at this now, that diffusion. One of the things I liked on my last scene too is I went back over it. Let's do it with the 0.7. Just to bring out, you know, some crisp little areas again. Kind of watch out for that Clair. Okay. So you can use, I don't know, kind of multi-sized dots as well. There's nothing, you know, I've been just staying with one or the other. The Artistro 0.7 millimeter paint pens would be really good in here too. Just kind of from a, you know, textural standpoint, a size standpoint, you know. We have all these little Artistro paint pens there. Acrylic paint as well. Okay. Well, this is just a way to kind of add that crisp little dot back into certain areas, but you can do it in a smaller scale that, you know, where you can leave a much more subtle mark with it. Okay. I don't know, there's too many things in here that are subtle, but, you know, that big fat pen, you know, making marks on there, and all these gazillion little dots, but I don't know, I think it is somewhat subtle and, you know, I don't know, incorporated into the piece pretty well. Alright, so anyways, let's see, let's wait for this to dry. And let's get this formatted. I think I can come up with, you know, decent formatting for this that might look interesting. And we'll see. We can do all kinds of things. We can pick out, there's so many different colors here, but, you know, some kind of white, maybe with a pink or something like that. Fuchsia, I don't know. We'll figure it out. Alright, we are back. I have formatted my scene into a card format, a little bit of a Pinot Noir. I don't know, that's the color of that purple there, and a piece of Stardream, I think 105-pound gold, okay, and then I've used a quote down here, and on this kind of iridescent white that I also used around the perimeter of the scene, okay, just to give it a little bit of a sheen, and I don't know, it makes for kind of a nice little card. I'm going to do this thing where you take some sort of element within the piece, and I'll put it down here in the little quote area just for a little bit of a kind of a visual little I don't know, kind of a connection, visual connection, okay? So it's like these little dots down there, these little pink little dots, and then we have these blooming trees up here. All right, so I think I'm getting a little bit closer to, I don't know, okay, going after, I don't know, whatever the spirit of the potential of these pens to, and what they can create, you know, due to the size, you know, just the formatting of these 3mm pens, and just the fact that they're opaque, okay? Now, when I put a dot down on the surface like that, it can cover up what you've already done, but if you're not really kind of taking the time to dry each layer of the different colors. When you put a dot down on top of a wet dot, the wet dot that's already been applied will bleed into that other dot. So I wouldn't say they're nice crisp little dots right here, but they're crisp enough, you know. I don't know. I don't really worry about that kind of bleeding. If they do kind of merge into one another, you know, so be it. You know, I mean, I'm trying to create these color harmonies anyway, so if they do bleed into one another, it's no big deal. But for the most part, you know, when I'm looking at this, they do look like some pretty crisp little, you know, unique colored dots. So I don't know. I'm fine with it, and I kind of like the direction this is going in. I think it's, you know, like I said, I think it's heading in the direction that I kind of want here. I mean, this reads as, you know, just kind of a, I don't know, whatever, a normal, I don't know, dye-based ink scene in some ways. Although I've covered up a lot of it except for on the cabin. But for the most part, we're talking about a pretty big, I don't know, kind of pointillist type of slathering of ink over these things. I mean, you can see these dots in here. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. You know those little puff paint types of paint pens too? Like if you had a pink one or a white one, and if you put kind of a little embellishment, I don't know if I would go berserk with those ones, but if you just kind of put a little dot on there, I think that would be really interesting to make it go like really three-dimensional. But these in themselves are somewhat dimensional. I mean, they're, you know, they're not raised by, you know, a large degree, but you know, somewhat. So I don't know. It's pretty fun stuff. And then you have these dark kind of foregrounds on here. I don't know. I guess it's because it's against this real textured background. They do seem kind of raised from a visual standpoint. I think it looks pretty good. But I don't know. The Claire dried just fine on top of this paper. That's why I use the silk paper as opposed to a glossy, so I can use it with the Claire and it would dry overnight, no problem. Just air drying. I didn't heat set it or anything like that. So I don't know. Stamp impressionism with in quotes, you know. So we can do these little types of pieces like this. Someone should get these pens. Someone should, I don't know, do like a Monet, like water lilies or something like that. That type of scene, or I don't know, haystacks, or you know what I mean. Saison? I can't remember, but I don't know, fun stuff. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you like this video, hope you like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video.